Hello everyone and welcome to our channel PhysioSaurus. In today's topic we are going to study about the ligaments present in the knee complex. In the previous video we were talking about the joint capsule and the video ended up here. Okay. So those who haven't watched my previous video on joint capsule, you will find the link in the comment box. Please go and watch that video and then start watching this video because these things are interrelated. I have started a series on the knee complex. Now let's start the topic. Yeah, one more disclaimer before starting this topic. I have also said that in the previous video and in the previous video of that too. Always study Norcans with the pen and a paper, okay, and note it down, note it all down, or everything, whatever you are studying, note it down, because knee complex is not an easy chapter. You will take a hell lot of time to process these types of things which you will come across when you will read the book. So even when you are watching my video, just pause the video here, go to your study room, bring a pen and a paper with you and note down all those things. I am highlighting every single important point in every topic. So if I repeat some lines, please note it down. This will be very beneficial for you during your exam days. Now let's talk about the ligaments. Now the ligaments are the soft tissue structures which control or resist excessive knee extension. Excessive knee extension is a condition and that condition is known as genu recurvatum. Okay, genu recurvatum. The second function of the ligament is it controls or resists the varus or the valgus stress at the knee, okay, during passive adduction or abduction of the tibia. Okay, now the third point is anterior or posterior displacement of the tibia below femur. Let's say I'm drawing a rough sketch here. Let's say that this is femur and these are the two condyles of the femur, okay, medial condyle and the lateral condyle of the femur, and below femur in the knee joint, if you will see, there is a tibia. Okay, so let's say that this is tibia. Now let's say that this is the anterior part and this is the posterior part. So if the tibia will displace anteriorly, if it get pushed anteriorly, that will be known as anterior displacement of the tibia. Okay, ADT, anterior displacement of tibia. But if the same tibia will be displaced in the posterior direction, that will be known as posterior displacement of the tibia. Okay, so who saves a tibia from anterior dislocation or the posterior dislocation? The answer is ligament. Okay, now we will also talk about which particular ligament does that in detail just after this video and just after this part actually. By the way, the answer is medial collateral ligament. We will talk about it in detail in this video only. Okay, now the next function of the ligament is it controls the medial and the lateral rotation of the tibia below the femur. So it basically also controls the range of motion of the medial rotation and the lateral rotation of the tibia. It just makes sure that it doesn't cross the normal range of motion. And the last point is it also controls or resists the combination of the movement of antero-posterior displacement, which is anterior displacement or the posterior displacement, and the rotation of the tibia. Okay, so together it is known as rotatory stabilization of the tibia. So ligaments, you could say that the ligaments are the rotatory stabilization of the tibia. So these are the function of the ligaments. Please keep that in mind, very important topic. Now let's talk a little bit about weight bearing or non-weight bearing versus open chain or closed chain. Okay, so weight bearing activity, here in the short form I am writing WB, which means weight bearing, and NWB, which means non-weight bearing. Okay, so weight bearing activity are the closed chain activity. Please keep that in mind that the weight bearing activities are the closed chain activity, which involves motion of the femur on the fixed tibia. So always keep that in mind that in closed chain activity the tibia is fixed while the femur moves on the surface of the tibia. But In NWB, which is the short form of non-weight bearing activity, those are the open chain activity which involves motion of the tibia on the fixed femur. So please keep that in mind, that in closed chain activity the tibia will be fixed and the femur will be moving on the tibia, but in open chain activity the tibia will move on the fixed femur. Okay. The next point is, true closed chain activity can only occurs when the position of the head or trunk is fixed in the air to maintain the line of gravity within the base of support. Now what is line of gravity? So basically, a line of gravity is the straight line or the perpendicular line drawn from the center of mass. This is the center of mass, COM in the short form, okay. So it is a line drawn from the center of mass towards the base of support perpendicularly. And what is base of support? Base of support is the area, okay. It is the area occupied by your body when you maintain a certain position. Let's say that the person is standing, so the area which he will occupy is the space between the legs. So the space between the legs will be known as the base of support. If you will talk about the different example, let's say the person is sleeping, okay. So the base of support will be huge, okay. Let's say if the person is sitting on a chair, then the base of support will be shorter than in compared to when the person is sleeping, but it will be more in compared to when the person is standing. So let's say if the patient is sitting in a chair, so the base of support will be from this to this one. So this will be the total base of support, okay, from the hip to the knee. So that will be the base of support. So this is what base of support means. Now what the line is saying is, basically the true closed chain activity can only occur when the position of the head is fixed. So let's say that the position of head is fixed. What is happening when the head is fixed and when it is not? We will talk about these two scenarios first. So when the position of the head is fixed, the center of mass will be here and base of support will be here. So the line of gravity will fall under the base of support. Okay, as you can see here, this thick line here is the line of gravity, and this dot, a huge dot here, is the center of mass. So the line of gravity will fall under the base of support. Now this is this case number 1. Let's say, I'm cleaning here, let's say that the head is not fixed, okay. So let's say that the patient is bending forward. So when patient will bend forward, what will happen? The center of gravity will lie outside the base of support, okay. The center of gravity will lie outside the base of support. Center of gravity will basically shift towards the anterior side, okay, towards the anterior side. So when it will shift towards the anterior side, there is a chance that it might lie outside the base of support. There is a chance that line of gravity might lie outside the base of support, okay. So true closed chain activity can only occur when the position of head or trunk is fixed to maintain the line of gravity within the base of support. So the line of gravity must always be within the base of support. Keep that in mind, okay. For example, anterior displacement of the tibia on femur during non-weight bearing is the same as posterior displacement of the femur on the tibia during weight bearing. This is just equivalent to each other, okay. So I have talked it with a little bit of example, okay. Now let's talk about our main heading, the first ligament, which is the medial collateral ligament. It has two portions, superficial portion and the deep portion. We'll talk about it one by one. So first point, superficial portion of the medial collateral ligament, it arises from the medial femoral condyle and it goes to the medial aspect of the tibia. Just remember this, okay. And if you want to go a little bit further than this, you could also say that it arises proximally from the medial femoral epicondyle. What does proximally means? Proximal means towards your head, and what does distal means? Away from your head. Okay, so superficial portion of the MCL ligament, it arises proximally from the medial femoral condyle. We'll talk about its diagram also. Okay, and it goes to the distal side to insert into the medial aspect of proximal tibia, distal to pes anserinus. Okay, what is pes anserinus? It is the common insertion of the three tendons, semitendinosus, gracilis and sartorius, in the medial aspect of the knee. Please don't forget it. This is the diagram of the pes anserinus. As you can see here, the three tendon here has the common insertion point, and this one is your pes anserinus, and this is the three tendon. This one is the semitendinosus, middle one is the gracilis, and this one is the sartorius muscle. And this one here is the diagram of the medial collateral ligament. Okay, now let's label the diagram. This one is the proximal femur. Okay, proximal femur, and this one is the distal tibia. Distal tibia. Also, this one is the medial condyle. Medial condyle of what? Medial condyle of proximal femur. And this one is the medial aspect of distal femur. Sorry, distal tibia. Okay, medial aspect of the distal tibia. This is why we say that the superficial portion of the MCL, it arises proximally. Now you can understand why I have written proximally, from medial femoral epicondyle or condyle, and it goes distally. Okay, I am forcing the pronunciation of some words here, okay, so that it could go directly inside your head. So superficial portion of MCL arises proximally from the medial femoral epicondyle. Okay, and it travels distally to insert into the medial aspect of the proximal tibia, and finally or you could also say distal to pes anserinus. Okay, so its insertion is into the medial aspect of proximal tibia, distal to pes anserinus. Okay, now let's talk about our second line. So second line says that the superficial portion of MCL, it attaches anterior to the origin of posterior oblique ligament and just distal to the femoral insertion of medial patellofemoral ligament. Let's read it one by one. So the first line says that the superficial portion of MCL attaches anterior to the origin of POL. Just look at here in this diagram, you can clearly see that the POL, the relation between the POL and the medial collateral ligament. Medial collateral ligament lies anterior to the POL. So this is what the first line says here. Superficial portion of MCL attaches anterior to the origin of posterior oblique ligament. Now the second line says just distal to femoral insertion of medial patellofemoral ligament. As you can see here in this diagram again, MCL ligaments lies distal to the femoral insertion of medial patellofemoral ligament. Why? This one here is the insertion of medial patellofemoral ligament, and just distal to it is your medial collateral ligament. It is placed distally because it is away from your head, because the head will be in the upward direction and your away from the head means in the downward direction, that means distally, and if you will go above, that means proximally. So this is why we use proximally for the femur and distally for the tibia. And here as you can see that the superficial portion of the MCL attaches anterior to the origin of POL and just distal, okay, just distal to femoral insertion of mediopatello-femoral ligament, just distal to, this one is the MCL ligament and it is just distal to the, this is your femoral insertion, okay, the huge dot here, this one is the femoral insertion of mediopatello-femoral ligament, this ligament, and just distal to it there is MCL ligament. Now let's talk about our next point. So the next point says deep portion of MCL is continuous with joint capsule. Okay, so we have already talked about the superficial portion. Now we are talking about the deep portion. Let me see if I have left any point or what. Okay, no point has been left. In this diagram only you can see this one is the lateral gastrocnemius only and this is the adductor tendon, which is a normal thing to notice. Now the deep portion of the MCL ligament is continuous with the joint capsule and it originates from the inferior aspect of medial condyle of the tibia. It originates from the inferior aspect of the medial condyle. So let's say that this one is the medial condyle, this one is the lateral condyle, this one is the medial and this one is the lateral. So inferior would be this, okay. So it originates from the inferior aspect of the medial condyle and it inserts on proximal aspect of medial tibial plateau. Now let's say that this one is the medial tibial plateau. So proximal means towards the head. So that would be the, this would be the proximal aspect and this would be the distal aspect. Okay, not this actually. If you will see the lower end of the tibia, this is the lower end of the tibia, that would be known as distal aspect of tibia. Okay, so this is why we are using the word proximal aspect. So deep portion of the MCL ligament is continuous with the joint capsule and it originates from the inferior aspect of medial condyle and inserts on proximal aspect of medial tibial plateau. Now let's talk about our next line. So throughout the course of MCL, deep portion of MCL is rigidly fixed to the medial border of medial meniscus. Okay, so throughout the course, throughout the route of MCL ligament, the deep portion of the MCL ligament is fixed to the, is rigidly fixed to the medial border of medial meniscus. We have already talked a hell lot about the medial meniscus. Okay, so here is just one line, as you can see here in this diagram too. Okay, so this one here is the medial meniscus, which is just lower to the medial collateral ligament. In this diagram it is very clear. Okay, so throughout the course of MCL ligament, it is rigidly fixed to the medial border of medial meniscus. Now let's talk about our next point. Okay, so in the note I have written something that superficial medial collateral ligament, it resists excessive valgus force, that means abduction and lateral tibial rotation stress. Okay, so this is very important. This is the function of the medial collateral ligament. Okay, now the next point is knee joint is able to resist a valgus stress at full extension compared to flexion. Okay, so basically what happens is during flexion there is a laxity of the MCL ligament. Okay, and also there is greater bony congruence in extension, so that means more surface area will be covered. Okay, so these are the two reasons behind it. Now let's talk about our third point. So third point here says MCL ligaments resist anterior translation of the tibia on femur in absence of ACL or ACL injury. Okay, so in absence of ACL, let's say that the ACL is not there or there is some kind of ACL injury. Okay, so in absence of ACL, MCL works on resisting the anterior translation of the tibia. Very, very important point. Okay, so in case of partial or the complete tear of MCL ligament, that will increase the load on ACL ligament. These are two like bhai, okay, they both are brother. If one will not be present, the other one will have to take all the load. Okay, now MCL ligament has a rich blood supply which makes it capable of healing fast in injury. So this is just a normal line, there is nothing to understand about. Okay, so till now I have discussed the course of the MCL and the function of the MCL. These two are very important. Please keep in mind this line also. You just have nothing to remember, just remember this, that the knee joint is able to resist a valgus stress at full extension compared to flexion. Okay, because there is a laxity of the ligament in the flexion state, but the ligament is taut in extension, which is also the closed pack position of the knee joint. Okay, and this was the function of the MCL ligament. And we have also discussed, our last line was, throughout the course of MCL, deep portion of the MCL is rigidly fixed to the medial border of medial meniscus. As you can see here, this one is the meniscus here, this is the medial collateral ligament, and this one is the meniscus. So the medial border of the meniscus, medial meniscus, it is rigidly fixed to the MCL ligament, as you can see here in this diagram. Okay, this one is the MCL and this one is the medial meniscus here. Okay, now let's talk about the lateral collateral ligament. So we are just talking about the medial collateral ligament and the lateral collateral ligament in this video. We will talk about more of the ligaments such as ACL, PCL. There are many in upcoming videos. Okay, so the lateral collateral ligament is located on the lateral side of the tibiofemoral joint. First point. Second point is, it attaches from the basically it arises from the lateral femoral condyle and then it travels to the fibular head. Okay, so if we will go more specific, we will say it arises proximally from the lateral femoral condyle and then travels distally to the fibular head. I don't think that there is an issue now using the word proximally and distally. Okay, because I have already discussed what is proximal and what is distal. Okay, so then it travels distal to the fibular head, where it joins with the tendon of the biceps femoris to form a conjoined tendon. Okay, so when it goes distally to the fibular head, it forms a conjoined tendon after meeting with the biceps femoris. Biceps femoris is his lost brother. Okay, now it is an extracapsular ligament. Okay, second point. The third point is, LCL or the lateral collateral ligament is primarily responsible for resisting varus stress. Very important point, please keep that in mind. Okay, and it limits frontal plane motion. Frontal plane motion means abduction or the adduction movement at fully extension. Okay, the same reason, because in the full extension the LCL ligament will be taut. Okay, so the next point is, it also resists excessive lateral rotation of the tibia as well. There is nothing to talk about much. There is nothing much to talk about the lateral collateral ligament. Basically, the medial collateral ligament is present in the medial aspect of the knee. Okay, in the medial side there is MCL and the lateral side there is LCL, and the balance between them is very important. Okay, so there are certain functions which are common for both of the ligament. So please note it down, whatever I said in this video, and make your own notes. I hope that all of your doubts were cleared after watching this video, but still if any of your doubt still persists, feel free to use my comment section. Okay, so I'll do whatever I can to make sure that you don't have any doubts left. So thank you so much for watching this video.